I would like to ask Alexandra Jach to take the floor now. She's the curator, manager, facilitator, coach. She graduated from art history in Krakow in Jagiellonian University, and then she started her now 10-year-long collaboration with the Avant-Garde Art Museum in Łódź. In 2019, I think you stopped your work there, and you set up a group, Culture for Climate. You had 8 other participants. That's how you started the new stage of your journey. But it's not entirely new. Ola has been the curator and organizer of many exhibitions, and you might have seen an exhibition she curated in Hamburger Hauptbahnhof. What was the title? I don't remember the exact title, but it was talking with birds, fish, bulls, and lions, I think. Yes, the title was quite long. I don't remember it exactly. All right, thank you, and let's start the presentation. All right, I'm going to have my own timekeeping. As we've learned, time is a value that we, people working in art, we do know what's the value of time, and we work with it. Today I would like to tell you about Culture for Climate. It's a collective that was set up in the pandemic year 2020 by, like Joanna said, by 9 women. Me and 8 other women. Here you have the names. So what are the roots of this idea? We've all been involved in some kind of activities within the culture area. So we have educators, curators, experienced managers, or heads of NGOs who have implemented many projects focusing on environmental issues. And at some point, we all face the question, what's next? Are we going to continue implementing these pretty advanced, interesting projects together with our partners, institutional partners as well? But very often, when the project comes to a close, the community dissipates, and the work on relevant solutions also comes to a halt. So that's what we started to perceive as the lost potential, and hence the idea to come together and work as a collective. Our first step, an idea, was to create a web page, a Culture for Climate .pl. The website is both in Polish and in English, and there on this web page you can find recommendations for greening institutions and organizations. Very simple solutions that can be applied immediately, related to educating people working in administration institutions, raising awareness, changing behaviors without any costs involved. There are also suggestions that require some kind of funding and more complex recommendations related to systemic issues requiring either funding or effort and work on rethinking the way in which the given institution operates, and we were very keen to have as many of such recommendations on our webpage, greening recommendations that can actually be implemented on the go immediately, that depend only and solely on the goodwill of people working in such institutions. I think that you in this room certainly know that ideas related to sustainable development, we can call it using different names, green transformation, for example, that they've been implemented within businesses or at large scale. So for us it was important to also find such points that differentiate us from business thinking which is in itself quite inspiring as well, and quite advanced. But since in Poland many institutions that create and facilitate, foster culture, they are public institutions, or they are non-profit organizations. We wanted to focus on activities within the public or non-profit spheres. In our view, what can be done by such institutions? First of all, institutions such as museums have a long life, so they can actually afford creating communities surrounding them for a long time, and providing the opportunity to implement complex projects requiring many steps. They can introduce environmentally friendly change, they can shape behaviors, they can foster collaboration between themselves and local communities, creating also collaboration going beyond the local community. They can also experiment with different solutions that wouldn't be attractive for businesses because they would not generate much profit. And this is interesting because that's what I've been hearing from many people I work with in businesses as well, who focus on sustainable development, and they've been telling me that they are quite jealous about that. The solutions that they implement are always budget-oriented, and that we can afford creating green prototypes of processes and products and services on a smaller scale, but with a much larger space for experimenting. When we thought about how to approach the topic of green institutions, we decided to define and identify specific areas we wanted to work on together with institutions, and that's what we actually started to do, creating and organizing workshops about green institutions. We teach people how they can, within their own institutions, implement such projects. So we identified areas which could be found in more or less every institution dealing with culture and all smaller organizations. So we have topics such as building or caring for the surrounding, caring for nature, everyday practices, financial issues, partnerships. You can see many different areas coming from different orders, and we were very keen to include different orders as well. because this is also something that differentiates us from many other solutions in the so-called green business. The social issues for us are as important as environmental issues, which means that sensible management of resources, material resources, for example, not wasting food and electricity, water, is as important as good relationships at work, well-being of workers and employees, good relationships and collaboration with neighbors. What I mean by that is good, effective, empathic, and with the potential to grow. Collaboration with other institutions, organizations, raising awareness about environmental issues. We believe that institutions of culture can get involved in these areas and address these topics. Topics such as organization of work, involving working on the structure of organization, introducing flat hierarchies and working out new, novel ways of collaborating. Here at this Congress we've been talking a lot about collaboration. I'm really impressed by the projects that you tell us about, how they roll because of human energy that feeds them, which is free. By which I mean that people who are involved, they actually generate the modes of doing, and it's actually possible if you work and if you act with freedom, and that's what might not be so possible in institutions of culture which work according to a specific pattern, and which have been working like this for many years. In many institutions of culture, the structure has been there for many years, and it's not up to date with the ways in which people work in other places, in businesses, in art, where we are involved in informal groups and using human potential creating this space of autonomy and agency. Summing up, when we talk to other people about our greening initiatives, greening actions, we often come across doubts and questions. People say, well, it looks so simple, but for sure it's not so simple. And here you can see examples of some typical dilemmas or A versus B questions. For example, environmental thinking is expensive. That's an assumption that people often make. Perhaps we haven't calculated it so thoroughly, but we just assume that environmental actions are expensive. Or knowledge. The assumption that we need complex knowledge and spend a lot of time to study a given topic, and only then we can implement some practices. This is also something that blocks and hinders introduction of even small changes. Or the thing that is very important for us, because we work with institutions, the relationship between individual involvement, what I can do as an employee, as a single individual employee, versus what the system could do, what I can expect from the system. And who should be acting here? So this is also the area that we often have to address. Our response is that these poles actually support each other, individual action and the pressure on the system within which we operate. They actually support each other, are mutually interdependent. I would like to finish with that, to perhaps leave some space for discussion and our joint collaborative work. Thank you very much for inviting me. And that will be it. Thank you.
A German Jewish American sociologist, Mr. Wallenstein, he said that every day, everywhere in the world, there is a struggle between the good and the evil, and by the end of the day, we don't know what will prevail and win. I think that what Alexander presented to us is an unusual suggestion of a grassroots revolution in Poland. Probably this face has a female face. I apologize to men who are present here, but so far that's apparently the case. So the 9 people who can run a very pioneering project, which is not founded, as it sometimes happens in Germany, by a foundation at a federal level. There is an idea to create 19 institutions that would be dealing with the coal world and the way of funding them. This project has already been launched, if I remember well. No, this is a totally grassroots initiative of 9 responsible, courageous girls who know that things happen not only now, but they also have repercussions and consequences for the future. Coming back to the person who planned this discussion and who originated this idea, what Consent once told me not a long time ago, made me terrified. Brandenburg is now a place that is health, a lung, heart, and the stomach for Berlin, not only for Berlin. If we continue to work like that in this beautiful area region, in 30 years from now, we'll be in a steppe, in a desert, because this land has an incredible nature, many meadows, lakes, and in 30 years from now, it may be not there. So what Ola does in Poland, it is also a totally pioneering grassroots idea for me. It's very important, and I would like to thank you very much for that.